In 1930, a newly married young man named Ray Wisehart purchased a pair of black binoculars at the local hardware store in downtown Muncie, Indiana. Well, you call them binoculars. I call them a time machine. Young Ray would sit in the ranger's towers looking through the lenses, searching for forest fires. And for the first time, he set his sights to the sky where airplanes filled with people were flying by and stars seemed just out of reach. Ray always had his binoculars close at hand, mostly because it brought danger just a little bit closer. And in 1968, Ray died, and the old binoculars were put into a box. A few years later, his son Russell pulled the old binoculars out of the box and took them on his family vacation. Now, most of the men in the family were cowboys, and Ray's son Russell was no exception. That year, he and his family traveled through Arizona's cactus-filled desert. As they came to the Grand Canyon, Russell looked through the same lenses his dad Ray had looked through years earlier when Russell was just a boy. This time, Russell's sights were set even higher. He would sit on the mysterious red rocks of Sedona as the sun went down. Then he turned his sights to the heavens, where he saw the first satellites blinking across the night sky. Well, the family grew, and adventure took a back seat to education and a career. It wasn't long before Grandma passed away, and at the gravesite, Russell looked at his son Mark, handed him a worn leather case, and said, "Grandma wanted you to have these." Mark held out his hands, and there lay the infamous time machine. And at 45 years old, Mark found himself in a rites of passage. He could feel the weight of its memories as he held the tattered case. There was a sense of responsibility and expectation to seek out his own adventures. And that leads me to crotchety old Uncle Howard. Uncle Howard was a real cowboy too, but his mastery of tool and die in the war earned him a position at the United States Air Force Academy. Howard received commendations from NASA for his work on the Space Shuttle Challenger. So it was no surprise that when Uncle Howard died, he left his nephew with a love for NASA and the space program. When Mark got older, he moved his family to Central Florida, where he had the chance to stand on the third floor of that concrete bunker and look through those lenses to see men as little ants crawling all over the pearly white hull of the Space Shuttle Discovery. These lenses had gone from starlight to satellite to shuttle flight. Now Mark was staring across 5 miles of swamp at the gleaming main attraction. The Space Shuttle Discovery was waiting to blast its way free of Earth's gravitational pull one last time. Mark had 3 pictures in his pocket that day: Grandpa Ray, his dad Russell, and old Uncle Howard. Mark looked at the clock as the 10-second countdown began. He lifted those binoculars to his eyes as Discovery lifted off its launching pad in a giant ball of flame. The adrenaline in his veins told him this old time machine was working perfectly. They're old and worn and still fit into the same brown leather case with its sagging seams, struggling to contain its contents. And Mark sat for a while in his office and stared at the old time machine. And that's when it occurred to him that he wouldn't be the last person to look through those lenses. He knew that someday he would pass this time machine on to his grandson. He tried to imagine what his eyes would behold. And then Mark remembered his dad Russell telling him about the day Grandpa Ray went to an old hardware store and picked up a pair of black binoculars in a brown leather case and imagined what sights he could see.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.